It was a cold, frigid night in February of 2001. It was approximately 10 o'clock p.m., and a local police officer was patrolling the quiet streets of Pine River, Minnesota. The officer was driving by Ultimate Liquors when he noticed a car running in the parking lot with no one inside of it. The officer knew the vehicle belonged to the clerk, 50-year-old Rachel Anthony, who had most likely started her car to allow it to warm up while she closed the store. The officer continued his patrol, and when he came back across Ultimate Liquors 3 hours later, he began to become concerned. Rachel's car was still in the parking lot, running with nobody inside. The officer would check the front door of the store to find it locked. He would then move to the alley behind the store and find the back door open. Inside the store, Rachel's coat and other items would be found, but Rachel was nowhere to be seen. This is Midwest Mystery Files, Episode 35, The Murder of Rachel Anthony. Hello everyone, and welcome to Midwest Mystery Files. I'm your host, Jeremiah, with just a few quick things before we start. Midwest Mystery Files is a true crime podcast focused on missing and murdered cases within the Midwestern region of the United States. I can be found on all major podcast platforms, as well as on YouTube with delayed episodes. Social media and contact info will be listed at the end of the episode. If you wish to support the podcast and help fund article and record searches, as well as get early access to episodes and bonus episodes, I encourage you to check out my Patreon at www.patreon.com/MidwestMysteryFiles. I would also like to take this moment to thank my amazing patrons, Laura, Todd, and Teresa. Now, without further delay, on to today's case. Rachel Ann Anthony was born Rachel Ann Pettet on May 30th, 1950, in Ohio, to Douglas Pettet and Lucille Dusek. I was unable to find a whole lot on Rachel's early life, but from what I could tell from census and marriage records, she grew up in Ohio. At the time of her birth, she had one sister. Their father would pass in 1952, and Lucille would soon marry and give Rachel one more sister and a brother. As a young woman, Rachel would marry once and divorce in the 1970s, before marrying Frank Anthony in 1984. The couple would continue to live in Ohio for the next year before moving to Princeton, Minnesota, with Rachel's 3 children, Robert, Jessica, and Tricia, and her stepkids through Frank, Sherry, and Brian. The couple would remain together until divorcing in 1993. Shortly after the divorce, Rachel, now into her early 40s, would enroll at nearby Cambridge Community College in Cambridge, Minnesota, and graduate in 1994. While there, Rachel participated in drama and literature, while also dabbling in photography, poetry, and creative writing. She also helped organize the school's creative writing and drama clubs, and was one of the drama club's first presidents. Gail Cassie, an English instructor at the school, would tell the Star Tribune in March of 2001, quote, "She was very assertive, just had a heart of gold." Gail would go on to tell the Tribune that Rachel had befriended and helped other students who were divorced mothers. Rachel also worked as an English tutor and a computer lab aide, and on top of that, she was a member of the college magazine's editorial board. Rachel had written a variety of pieces, including short stories and poems, some of which were published in the magazine. Pam Dowell, a classmate of Rachel's, would state that writing and drama were Rachel's escape from a failed marriage and troubled childhood. In a profile that she wrote about Rachel in the college newspaper, Pam would say of Rachel, quote, "She turned to writing as a way to escape the harsh realities of the pain she endured. Pam would go on in the piece to write that Rachel had faced both sexual and physical abuse as a child. Rachel herself would be quoted in the story as saying, quote, "I came from a place where I wasn't allowed to think, to make decisions, and to socialize." She would also speak on financial struggles, telling Pam in her piece, quote, "Sometimes there have been times when we did not know where our next roll of toilet paper was coming from. It's been a day-to-day struggle." Rachel would also note that she had not owned a pair of winter boots since moving to Minnesota. Despite her hardships, Rachel would appear to remain a positive presence in those around her, with Pam Noel telling the Star Tribune, "This was a bright, bright woman. You wanted her to succeed." After graduating from Cambridge Community College, Rachel would continue to live in Minnesota before moving to the East Coast to live with one of her daughters for a time. But she would eventually return to Minnesota, first living on her own in Pequot Lakes in an apartment, before moving in with her daughter Jessica, Jessica's husband, and their 2 children in rural Pequot Lakes. Rachel would watch her grandchildren during the day, while working during the evening at Ultimate Liquors in Pine River, a small town of approximately 900 people located 10 miles south of Pequot Lakes. In her free time, she would enjoy boating, flying kites with the family, or taking photographs of her grandchildren. Rachel was also well liked in the community and by those who knew her. One friend, when talking about Rachel and her grandchildren, would tell the Pioneer Press, quote, "She called them the Bruiser Brothers. She's really fun. She has a very good sense of humor." She would be described as a good and reliable worker by Ultimate Liquor's owner, Kim Johnson, who would also state that she was an outgoing clerk who was very friendly with customers, never having any problem with them. Another friend would also describe Rachel as a very outgoing person. She would tell the Pioneer Press, quote, "We had her to our house at Thanksgiving. She's very giving and kind." She would continue on to note that her and her husband would visit Rachel anytime they bought anything in the store, stating, quote, "If one of us goes in there without the other, she always writes a note on the bag saying hi to the other." Tuesday, February 27th, 2001, was a blistering cold day, with a high of 11 degrees Fahrenheit and a frigid low of negative 19 degrees Fahrenheit. Rachel was having a normal day, watching her children in the morning with a scheduled shift at Ultimate Liquors from 2 to 10 p.m. From what is known, it was a fairly average night for Rachel. The store owner, Kim Johnson, would tell the Star Tribune that she stopped into Ultimate Liquors at about 4 o'clock to make sure Rachel had enough change for the night, and would state everything seemed very much in order. What is known about the end of Rachel's night is that she likely exited the store through the front door, started her vehicle, a Ford Escort, as it was sitting around negative 7 degrees Fahrenheit at the time. She then re-entered the store, locked the front door, and unlocked the back to take out trash. At this time, Pine River police officer Sean Bennett would be on patrol and would notice Rachel's vehicle running outside the store, something that was most likely a common occurrence for the officer during this time of year. What would not be common, however, is what he spotted the next time he passed the liquor store. At approximately 1 o'clock a.m., Officer Bennett would once again drive past Ultimate Liquors and would notice Rachel's Ford Escort was still in the parking lot, running. Upon inspecting the scene, Officer Bennett would find the front door locked, with no sign of Rachel inside or outside the store. He would then walk around to the back and find the back door unlocked. At this point, he would call for backup. Once they arrived, they would enter the store. Inside, the officers found no sign of Rachel. However, her coat, purse, and cigarettes were located on a chair behind the sale counter. There was no sign of a struggle, and nothing appeared to be missing. Jessica, Rachel's daughter, and her husband, with whom Rachel lived with, would tell the Star Tribune that when Rachel didn't return home at 10:30 like she usually did, they didn't think much of it. It wasn't until the officers contacted her at 1:30 a.m. that she discovered her mother was missing. Immediately, officers and Rachel's loved ones would express concern and express potential for foul play. There was no reason for Rachel to leave, and there had been nothing in her life to suggest someone was out to get her. Jessica would tell the Star Tribune, quote, "I don't know. I'm still in shock. We're a little dinky town way up north. I never thought that I would be involved in something like this." She had no enemies that we could think of. She never mentioned anyone bothering her or antagonizing her or whatever. Jessica's husband, Rodney Winch, would go on to state, quote, "She did not just take off. I can tell you that. There's no doubt in my mind that something happened to her. She left her car, her purse, her keys, everything there. It wouldn't make sense. She left her coat, and it was 10 below zero. The door was wide open. Nothing was taken. It just don't make no sense." Police would waste little time beginning a search for Rachel. Within a day, Pine River Police were joined by 50 officers from the Cass County Sheriff's Department and local firefighters to perform a ground search. A half-dozen agents from the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, or the BCA, would arrive and look for clues inside of Ultimate Liquors. Terry Smith, special agent in charge for the BCA, would tell the Star Tribune, quote, "It's very worrisome. What we know right now is enough to make us very concerned for this woman's welfare. Information we have right now is that she had no enemies, and it's probably not a jealous boyfriend situation. We're just kind of at a loss." To further hinder things, Ultimate Liquors did have a surveillance system. However, it was unfortunately not working at the time of Rachel's disappearance. Over the next several days, searches would continue in outlying areas, as well as with officers driving any and all rural roads in the area for any sign of Rachel. A reward of $10,000 would also be raised in the first week of the investigation in hopes to bring in leads. In the first few days, police were also seeking information on anyone who may have been in the store near the time of Rachel's disappearance, as well as information on vehicles spotted in the area, which included a blue Ford Taurus, an older black Chevy Suburban, a small red car, and a small black, possibly late 80s pickup truck with 2 white stripes. During this time, investigators would receive a few calls from people believing they had seen Rachel, but unfortunately none of them would pan out to anything. The next step investigators would take is to remove 2 computers from the home of Rachel and her family to see if any information could be found on who Rachel may have been talking to. To this move, Cass County Sheriff Randy Fisher would tell the Pioneer Press, quote, "I think we probably learned some things. Any data could be helpful in establishing who Rachel was having contact with prior to her disappearance." Rachel's family did not believe much would be found. Her son, Robert Marsden, would tell the Pioneer Press that she most likely used the computer mainly for writing. Any contact with individuals was most likely family and close friends. It was very unlikely that she ever ventured into chat rooms. Sheriff Fisher would later say that nothing significant was found. By March 6th, investigators were able to review sales from February 27th and identify almost everyone who was in Ultimate Liquors prior to its closing. The only one they could not identify was someone who made a purchase only minutes before the store closed, and investigators were putting out a plea for that individual to come forward. Rachel's son Robert would tell the Star Tribune, "It's just really an informal questioning thing, not an accusation. Obviously, it places him or her as the last person who saw Mom, and possibly they saw something or a car. That individual has yet to be found to this day." At the time, though, nothing was slowing the family down, as they would put posters up on snowmobile trails, as well as anywhere they could in communities within a 40-mile radius of Pine River. To all this, Robert Marsden would tell the Star Tribune on March 7th, quote, "We're not going to stop looking. We're not going to stop thinking until we find Mom. Mom, if you can hear us, we're not going to stop looking." At the time he was speaking with the press, 2 divers would search under Pine River Dam in Pine River, but would not find any sign of Rachel. As searches for Rachel continued, over the next several weeks. The frigid Minnesota winter would soon turn to spring, which would allow for more ambulable travel across rural areas. This is what would bring 4 teenagers to find a shocking discovery. On April 13th, 2001, at approximately 2 o'clock p.m., the 4 teenagers were horseback riding on a remote road on the northwest outskirts of Breezy Point, 13 miles southeast of Pine River, when they came across the body of a deceased female. Reports state that she was found in a steep ravine about 15 feet from the side of the road. The area was not visible to motorists, only those on foot and horseback. On April 14th, the body would be positively identified as Rachel Anthony. Cass County Sheriff Ray Fisher would tell the press that Rachel died of asphyxia caused by homicidal violence. Upon the release of this information to the public, Rachel's son-in-law, Rodney Winch, would tell the Star Tribune, quote, "We're still in a bit of shock. It's not the outcome we wanted, but eventually we hope to know. It just hurts. Obviously, we want someone punished for this. There's a sick person on the loose who isn't safe for anyone else out there." As far as the asphyxia by homicidal violence, Sheriff Fisher declined to state whether Rachel was strangled, smothered, or deprived of oxygen in some other way. Over time, it would be revealed that Rachel was clothed when found, but investigators declined to divulge if she had been sexually assaulted or if there was any DNA evidence found at the scene. With the knowledge that this was now a full-blown homicide investigation, investigators would try to clamp down on the suspect, but unfortunately would come up short-handed very quickly. With the exception of the last customer of the night, everyone who had been in the store that day had been identified, and there were no reports of suspicious persons prior to Rachel's disappearance. On April 20th, 2001, Sheriff Fisher would tell the Star Tribune, quote, "This is a real whodunit. We've interviewed hundreds of people on the disappearance, and the investigation has not focused on any one individual." BCA agent Terry Smith, who assisted in the investigation and had been part of several similar investigations over the last several years, would also speak to the difficulty of cases such as this one, telling the Star Tribune, quote, "These cases get to be like a millstone around your neck. In these abduction murders where there is nothing in common between the victim and suspect, it's rough. You have 2 lives that touch just for a moment. There are no common threads, no common links. The decks are stacked against you, almost from the beginning." As the season would move from spring to summer and into fall, there would be little headway made, and gossip and speculation would work to hamper the investigation. According to a September 9th, 2001 article from the Pioneer Press, rumors included that Rachel had been chatting with her abductor on the internet, the killer had been let out of prison and knew her, and even that a police officer had been arrested in the case. The police officer in question was Officer Sean Bennett, who had discovered Rachel's car running outside of Ultimate Liquors. Bennett was filling in part-time and was from out of town, prompting some rumors about his involvement. However, he was never considered a suspect. Rachel's daughter, Jessica, didn't let these rumors bother her much, and she thought talk about her mom would keep people aware and call in with information. She would tell the Pioneer Press simply, quote, "Just don't make the stuff up." Cass County Sheriff Ray Fisher would also note that the gossip could lead to calls that would lead officers on wild goose chases, keeping them away from efforts that really mattered in their search for the murderer. A year after Rachel disappeared, the town of Pine River was still, understandably, very much not at ease. A February 28, 2002 article from the Star Tribune would open with a description of how the officer on duty most nights would ensure that the clerk at Ultimate Liquors, which had moved locations, would make it safely to their vehicle. Same with the clerk at the local Conoco station, and the employees at the local nursing home. Many residents had come to believe that there was a high likelihood that the person responsible was still in Pine River. One resident would tell the Tribune, quote, "There isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about it. It's had an effect on everybody. I used to walk down the street here and feel very comfortable, because I grew up here. But it goes through your mind that maybe this person walking by you is the one who took Rachel. You just don't know. It makes you think. A lot." Pine River Police Chief Steve Abraham would echo this sentiment by stating that the general consensus among investigators was, quote, "Whoever did this is still here, and everybody is still very aware of that." As far as what Rachel's daughter Jessica thought, she would tell the Star Tribune that the family thought she was either picked at random or attacked by someone who was familiar with the liquor store layout, its hours, and Rachel's nightly routine. Jessica would state, quote, "You pretty much have to live in this town to know that there was an entrance to the liquor store from the alley." In 2002, investigators presented Rachel's case to FBI profilers in hopes for some insight. A Star Tribune article from February 26, 2006, reports that the profilers agreed with investigators that the killer probably lived in the area, as a local resident would be more likely to shop in the liquor store, which was tucked into a small building 2 blocks off the highway. Someone local would also be more likely to use the back entrance and know about the road and ravine where Rachel was found. BCA agent David Jurga, who was now special agent in charge, would tell the Star Tribune that it was the FBI's view that Rachel probably provoked someone during an argument that escalated. It's not known, however, if it was spontaneous or the result of a simmering feud. Rachel's daughter would reiterate to the Star Tribune that her mother didn't have any enemies, but she also wasn't afraid to speak up, stating, quote, "If she saw something wrong, she wouldn't really hold back." Rachel's other daughter, Tricia, would add, quote, "She wouldn't really hold back. I think she tried to make it nice, but if she couldn't, she'd tell it like it is." In March of 2017, the Pioneer Press would speak with family and investigators once more on the status of the case. Jessica would state, quote, "It sucks nothing has come out of this, as it has been 16 years. Every time we have a family function or are doing something, we wish Mom was here with us. It's like when you are sick, you want to call your mom. You just want your mom here with you." As far as the investigation, the article would make note of the last transaction, which was at 9:57 p.m., and that whoever made that last transaction was a prime person of interest. BCA agent David Jurga, who is now retired, would note that once Rachel was found, it opened up more suspect possibilities, stating, quote, "This opened up a whole new group of possible suspects. They could be from Breezy Point, Jenkins, Pequot Lakes. We already believe that whoever did it was from around here, and after hiding the body there, it reconfirmed it. Why this particular road? There was no reason for out-of-towners to be here. How would they find this particular road? If it was someone from out of town, you have the main highway to leave town." Jurga would continue to say that the suspect either had a weapon to lure Rachel out of the store, or there was more than one person involved, as it would be tough to abduct her without help. He would state, quote, "It would be hard to convince Rachel to go with someone without her belongings, with the winter conditions out there, and leaving the back door unlocked. It doesn't appear she was killed in that area, so there has to be another crime scene out there." Cass County Sheriff Tom Birch, who was chief deputy at the time of Rachel's disappearance, would add, quote, "This is really hard on the family, the community, and the investigators who have had to deal with this for all these years. We hope that by people reading this story, that it will bring some light on the case. The person, or persons, responsible for this need to be held accountable, and we are committed to resolving this case." The last update from Rachel's case came in 2022, when investigators released an additional detail about the last transaction of the night before Rachel disappeared. While a seemingly minor detail, investigators hoped it could jog some memories. The unidentified individual who had the last transaction of the night purchased a bottle of Mickey's malt liquor and Cool cigarettes. BCA Superintendent Drew Evans would state to the media, quote, "We hope that this new detail may jog someone's memory, and we encourage them to come forward. Rachel's family deserves answers, and the person who killed her deserves justice." It's been 23 years since Rachel Anthony was taken from her job in Pine River, Minnesota, and murdered. And in that time, there has been little in the way of progress, and there is an unknown customer that could hold some answers. In the absence of those answers, we only have theories. This time around, I am truly not going to spend much time on theories at all for a couple reasons. One is that while I personally feel I'm not remotely close to the worst person out there who does this, my theories or speculations can still sometimes be a bit far-reaching, and I want to work on dialing it back a bit. And the second reason is that I think pretty much everyone is on the same page here. While it's certainly possible this could have been a completely random encounter from someone out of the area, and we can't rule that out 100%, I'm pretty much rolling with the investigators here. I think given the circumstances of Rachel's initial disappearance and the remoteness of where she was eventually found, this was most likely done by someone who was either from the area, or at the very least someone who may not have lived in the area anymore, but had at some point. Whether this person is the unknown customer that night, or if they were even known to Rachel, is very much anyone's guess. What is known is that a bright, social, friendly, and loving mother was taken and murdered that cold night in February. Not just a mother, but a sister and a daughter. A woman who loved to write, who loved photography, and who loved spending time with her grandchildren. Rachel Anthony was ripped from this world and discarded like she was mere trash. And despite the relentless efforts of investigators, no one has ever been named a suspect. And the last unknown customer of the night has never been found. To that last customer, I don't know if you're listening, but if you are, maybe you truly were just the last person to check out that night, and whatever happened right after you left the store. If that's the case, it's never too late for you to come forward. Maybe you just needed something like this to jog your memory, and perhaps you saw something that you didn't notice at the time. It is never too late. Until someone says something, or evidence is found, a family, a whole community even, sits and waits for answers. Answers that are needed to bring justice. Justice that Rachel Ann Anthony greatly deserves. If you have any information on the murder of Rachel Anthony, please contact the Cass County Sheriff's Office at 218-547-1424 or the BCA at 651-793-7000 or 877-996-6222. If you're looking for any further information, my archive sources came strictly from the Pioneer Press and the Star Tribune, although there are some more recent articles from the Brainerd Dispatch. If you wish to let me know what you think happened, have case suggestions or comments, or just want to follow me and the show on social media, I can be found on Instagram at Midwest Mystery Files, X at Files Midwest, and on Facebook by searching for Midwest Mystery Files. You can also email me at midwestmysteryfilespod@gmail.com. I do also post photos and sometimes links relevant to each case on social media, mainly on Facebook and Instagram. Lastly, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Good Pods, please feel free to rate and review the show. This helps make the show more visible in searches, and more importantly, helps bring attention to the cases I cover. Thank you to all who have done so already. Take care, everyone, and I will see you all next time.